Jaewon Park was counting money behind the counter of his small convenience store when the sky went dark. It was 11 in the morning on a Tuesday, and Seoul should have been bright with sunlight. Instead, black shadows covered the entire city like someone had turned off the sun. He looked up from his cash register and saw customers pointing at the windows. Their faces showed fear and confusion. Jaewon walked outside and tilted his head back. The sight made his stomach drop. Giant ships hung in the air above Seoul. They were so big that 3 of them could cover the entire downtown area. The ships looked like black metal triangles with red lights blinking along their edges. His phone started buzzing with emergency alerts. Every news channel was showing the same thing. Massive alien ships had appeared over every major city on Earth: Tokyo, London, New York, Moscow. All of them had the same black triangle ships floating in their skies like metal clouds. Jaewon had been a sergeant in the Korean Army for 8 years before he opened his store. He knew what military vehicles looked like. These ships were definitely built for war. The red lights were probably weapon systems, and the ships were positioned to control all the important areas of each city. This was not a peaceful visit. The news reporter on his phone was speaking very fast. She said similar ships were appearing all over the world, and that all military bases were being attacked. The alien ships were using some kind of energy weapons that could destroy tanks and fighter jets in seconds. The reporter looked scared as she read updates about military units being wiped out. Min Seo Kim was teaching her chemistry class at Bisan High School when the principal made an announcement. Over the intercom, he told all teachers to turn on their classroom televisions immediately. When Min Seo saw the news, her hands started shaking. She had been teaching for 15 years and had never seen anything like this. The alien ships over Bisan were just as big and scary as the ones over Seoul. Her students were asking her questions, but she did not have answers. She watched the news showing footage of alien soldiers walking out of their ships. These creatures were tall and thin with gray skin and black armor. They carried weapons that shot bright red beams. The worst part was what happened when human soldiers tried to fight back. The alien weapons turned military vehicles into piles of melting metal. Human bullets seemed to bounce off the alien armor like throwing rocks at a brick wall. Within 2 hours, most of the Korean military was either destroyed or running away. Do-yoon Lee was operating a construction crane in Incheon when his foreman started screaming at everyone to look up. The massive alien ship above their construction site was so low that Do-yoon could see details on its hull. It had strange symbols carved into the metal and weapon ports that looked like open mouths ready to spit fire. Do-hyun climbed down from his crane and gathered with the other construction workers around a radio. The news was getting worse by the minute. Military bases in America were being destroyed. Fighter jets were being shot down before they could even get close to the alien ships. The reporter said that world leaders were trying to contact the aliens, but getting no response. Then the aliens finally spoke. Every television and radio on Earth was suddenly broadcasting the same message. A deep voice with a strange accent was speaking in perfect English. The voice belonged to Commander Vexrel of the Vorthan Empire. Commander Vexrel explained that the Vorthan Empire had conquered 17 different star systems. His people were warriors who had defeated advanced civilizations across the galaxy. Earth was just another primitive world that would join their empire or be destroyed. The commander gave Earth 72 hours to surrender completely. All military forces had to lay down their weapons. All world leaders had to publicly announce their surrender. If Earth refused, the Vorthans would kill every human on the planet. They had done this to other worlds before, and they would do it to Earth without any hesitation. What made the message even more terrifying was how calm Commander Vexrel sounded. He talked about destroying entire civilizations like he was discussing the weather. He mentioned the Zerathi Federation and the Kefmer warrior clans as examples of peoples who thought they could resist the Vorthan Empire. All of those civilizations were now extinct. Juan watched the message in his store with a dozen customers who had been too scared to leave. Everyone was quiet as they listened to the alien commander explain how hopeless resistance would be. The Vorthons had weapons that could crack planets in half. They had armies of genetically engineered super soldiers. They had conquered worlds with technology far more advanced than Earth. But something strange happened as Jaewon listened to the alien threats. Instead of feeling more afraid, he started feeling angry. The commander kept calling humans primitive and weak. He talked about Earth like it was already conquered. He acted like killing billions of people was just another day at work. The anger grew stronger when new reports started coming in. The aliens were not just attacking military targets anymore. They were destroying hospitals and schools. They were shooting at evacuation buses full of families trying to escape. The cities, they were killing anyone who tried to surrender, including doctors carrying white flags. Minseo Kim felt the same anger building inside her as she watched footage of alien soldiers executing wounded human troops. The creature showed no mercy to anyone. They killed soldiers who were trying to surrender. They destroyed ambulances carrying injured civilians. They even shot at children who were running away from the fighting. Started thinking about her grandfather who had fought in the Korean War. He used to tell her stories about fighting enemies with better weapons and more soldiers. Her grandfather and his friends had won battles using nothing but determination and clever thinking. They had defeated larger armies by refusing to give up and by fighting in ways their enemies did not expect. Oh-hyun Lee was having similar thoughts as he looked at the construction equipment around the job site. The aliens might have energy weapons and flying ships, but they probably did not understand how humans could use everyday things as weapons. A bulldozer could knock down their landing craft. Acetylene tanks could create explosions that might damage their armor. Concrete mixers could be turned into mobile bunkers all across Earth. Something was happening that the Vorthon Empire had never seen before. Instead of panicking and surrendering, humans were getting angry. Instead of running away, they were starting to plan. Instead of accepting defeat, they were preparing to fight back with whatever they could find. The Vorthons had studied Earth military forces, but they had completely ignored the civilian population. They did not realize that human civilians had built the weapons their military used. They did not know that human workers knew how to make things explode, burn, and break. They had no idea that human determination could turn ordinary people into deadly enemies. As the first day of the invasion ended, the aliens controlled most military bases and government buildings, but millions of angry humans were scattered throughout every city on Earth. And these humans were about to teach the Vorthon Empire a lesson they would never forget. 3 days after the invasion began, something happened that Commander Thexrel had never experienced in his long military career. His elite Crimson Guard soldiers were dying, and the enemies killing them were not soldiers at all. They were ordinary humans with no military training, using weapons made from household items. Sun Ho Choi sat in his apartment in Incheon, staring at multiple computer screens. He was a video game developer who had spent years creating strategy games about war and combat. Now he was using that knowledge to coordinate real battles against alien invaders. His gaming experience had taught him to think about warfare differently than trained soldiers. He had connected with other gamers across Seoul using encrypted chat programs they normally used for online tournaments. These gamers were now sharing information about alien patrol routes and weak points in their defenses. Sun Ho realized that the aliens moved in very predictable patterns, just like computer-controlled enemies in his games. The Vorthon soldiers always took the same routes through the city. They always stationed guards in the same positions. They always responded to attacks in exactly the same way. This made them easy to predict and trap. Sun Ho started sending messages to resistance groups, telling them exactly when and where alien patrols would appear. Meanwhile, Jaewon Park had turned his convenience store into a weapon factory. He knew that the aliens' energy shields could stop bullets and explosions, but he wondered if they could stop simpler things like fire and chemicals. He started mixing cleaning supplies and cooking oil to create homemade bombs. His first test came when a group of 3 Vorthon soldiers walked past his store. They were tall and intimidating in their black armor, carrying energy rifles that glowed with red light. J1 threw a bottle filled with gasoline and dish soap at the lead soldier. The mixture splashed across the alien armor and burst into flames. The Vorthan soldier screamed and started running. The fire was burning through gaps in his armor, where the energy shield could not protect him. The other two soldiers tried to help their companion, but J1 threw more firebombs at them. All three aliens retreated back to their landing zone while still on fire. Word spread quickly through the resistance networks that fire worked against the alien armor. People started making Molotov cocktails using bottles, beer cans, and any container they could find. The aliens discovered that their advanced technology was useless against the most primitive human weapon. Minseo Kim was having similar success using her chemistry knowledge. She had been experimenting with different household chemicals in her destroyed school laboratory. She found that mixing certain cleaning products created gases that the aliens could not breathe properly. Their helmets filtered out human biological weapons, but not simple chemical fumes. She taught other civilians how to make these gas mixtures using products from any grocery store or hardware store. Soon alien patrols were being forced out of buildings by clouds of toxic smoke created from floor cleaner and pool chemicals. The Vorthan's breathing systems were designed for different atmospheric conditions and could not handle these unexpected chemical attacks. Naoung An was working her night shift at a manufacturing plant when she realized that the factory equipment could be turned into weapons. The assembly line robots were controlled by computers and could be reprogrammed to do different tasks. She spent hours changing their programming to make them into mobile attack units. Her first robot weapon was a simple welding unit mounted on a mobile platform. She programmed it to move toward heat signatures and attack with its welding torch. When a Vorthan patrol entered the factory the next morning, they found themselves being chased by a machine that shot flames at them. The aliens had no experience fighting against modified industrial equipment. The most successful part of her plan involved the factory chemical storage tanks. The plant used various acids and solvents for manufacturing processes. Naoung rigged these tanks to explode when alien ships flew overhead. The resulting chemical clouds were so toxic that even the aliens' environmental suits could not protect them. Do-Hyun Lee had gathered a team of construction workers who were using their equipment as weapons. They discovered that alien energy shields were designed to stop fast-moving projectiles like bullets and energy beams, but the shields could not stop slow, heavy objects like concrete blocks dropped from construction cranes. His team started dropping chunks of concrete and steel beams on alien patrols from tall buildings. The Vorthans could not shoot at targets directly above them because their weapons were designed for horizontal combat. When a 2-ton concrete block fell on an alien soldier, the energy shield did nothing to help. The construction workers also found that their heavy machinery could ram through alien vehicles. The aliens had lightweight flying craft that were fast and maneuverable, but not very strong. A bulldozer moving at full speed could crash through the side of an alien transport and destroy it completely. But the biggest problem for the Vorthans was that they could not tell who was an enemy. Every human civilian was a potential threat. Old women carried bags that might contain explosives. Children on bicycles might be delivering weapons to resistance fighters. Office workers might have homemade chemical weapons hidden in their briefcases. Aliens tried to control this by setting up checkpoints and searching every human they encountered. But this only made more humans angry when the aliens started strip-searching families and confiscating personal belongings. Even people who had been trying to stay neutral joined the resistance. Kyungmin Jang had been working as a security guard, but his real training was from his time in special forces. He started teaching other civilians how to use weapons they captured from dead alien soldiers. The Vorthan energy rifles were actually quite simple to operate once you understood the basic controls. He set up training camps in subway tunnels and abandoned buildings. His students included teachers, office workers, shop owners, and retired grandparents. All of them learned how to shoot alien weapons, how to move without being detected, and how to set up ambushes in urban environments. Aliens tried to counter these attacks by sending in more soldiers and using heavier weapons, but every escalation only made the human resistance stronger. When the Vorthons started bombing civilian buildings, the survivors became even more determined to fight back. When they executed prisoners, the families of those prisoners joined suicide attack units. Commander Thexral received reports that made no sense to him. His soldiers were reporting that they were being attacked by invisible enemies who appeared from nowhere and disappeared just as quickly. They described humans who fought with no regard for their own safety, using weapons that should not have been effective against Vorthon technology. The worst part was that his soldiers were becoming afraid. They had been trained to fight other military forces using established tactics and advanced weapons. They had never faced an enemy that hid among civilians, used improvised weapons, and treated every building like a potential fortress. By the end of the first week, the Vorthon Empire had lost more soldiers on Earth than they had lost conquering the previous 3-star systems. The humans were not just fighting back, they were winning, and they were doing it using nothing but determination, creativity, and a complete refusal to surrender. 3 weeks had passed since the Vorthon Empire invaded Earth, and Commander Thexral was facing a crisis he had never experienced before. His elite military force was supposed to be conducting cleanup operations by now. Instead, they were trapped in a nightmare where every street corner could hide death. The humans had done something impossible. They had learned to use Vorthon weapons better than some of his own soldiers. Kyungmin Jang had become a legend among the human resistance. He was a former Special Forces soldier who now spent his days teaching civilians how to strip clean and fire captured alien energy rifles. An abandoned subway station beneath Seoul. Kyungmin stood before 30 ordinary people who had never held weapons. Before there was a librarian, a taxi driver, 2 high school students, and even a grandmother who had lost her family in the bombing. His voice was calm and patient as he explained how the energy rifle worked. "The power cell goes here," he said, pointing to a glowing cylinder. "The safety switch is this red button on the side. When you pull the trigger, hold it steady, because the energy beam will push back against your shoulder." He demonstrated by firing at a concrete wall. The red beam burned a perfect hole through 3 feet of solid concrete. The humans were learning faster than anyone expected. The librarian could now strip an energy rifle in under 2 minutes. The taxi driver had figured out how to overcharge the power cells to create makeshift grenades. The grandmother had become an expert sniper who could hit alien soldiers from 6 blocks away. But the most dangerous development was how different types of humans were working together. Each person brought skills that the others needed. Jeong Song was a teenager who spent her free time exploring abandoned buildings and hidden tunnels beneath the city. She knew every maintenance shaft, storm drain, and forgotten basement. In Seoul, she had created a network of secret passages that allowed resistance fighters to appear anywhere in the city within minutes. Her team included other young people who could crawl through spaces too small for adults. They moved weapons, ammunition, and information through the underground passages, while alien patrols searched the streets above. The Vorthons tried to counter this by mapping the tunnel systems, but the humans kept creating new passages. Do-Yun Lee and his construction workers used their heavy machinery to dig new tunnels and seal off old ones. They turned the entire city into a maze that only the humans could navigate. Aeon Woo Kang had been a paramedic before the invasion, but now he was something much more dangerous. He had organized medical teams that not only treated wounded resistance fighters but also studied captured alien technology and biology. His makeshift laboratory was hidden in the basement of a destroyed hospital. His biggest discovery came when he examined the body of a dead Vorthon soldier. He found that alien biology was surprisingly vulnerable to certain Earth bacteria. The aliens had no immunity to common human diseases because they had never been exposed to them. This gave him an idea that would change everything. Working with Min Seo Kim and her chemistry knowledge, they developed biological weapons. Using cultures from hospital laboratories, they created aerosol sprays that contained harmless human bacteria but were deadly too. Vorthan physiology: when resistance fighters used these weapons, entire alien patrols would become sick and weak within hours. The psychological impact on the Vorthan soldiers was becoming as important as the physical damage. The aliens had been trained to fight honorable enemies in open battles. They expected their opponents to wear uniforms, follow rules, and fight in predictable ways. Instead, they faced an enemy that used children as messengers, turned grandmothers into snipers, and made every civilian a potential killer. Yu had been a police detective before the invasion, and now he was running intelligence operations that would make professional spy agencies jealous. His network included everyone from street sweepers to business executives. Each person watched alien movements and reported back through a system of coded messages. Children on bicycles carried messages between resistance cells. Old men playing chess in parks were actually spotters who tracked alien patrol schedules. Women shopping at markets passed along information about weapon shipments and supply depots. The aliens could not take a step without the humans knowing about it. The worst part for the Vorthans was that they could not tell who was watching them. The woman pushing a baby stroller might be carrying explosives. The man reading a newspaper could be photographing their positions. A group of teenagers playing music might be using their instruments to send coded signals. Nayoung had expanded her factory operations to include other manufacturing plants across the city. Her teams were now producing improvised weapons on an industrial scale. They made thousands of chemical bombs, modified construction tools, and electronic devices that could jam alien communications. Her greatest success was when she figured out how to hack into the alien supply drones. These unmanned aircraft delivered ammunition, food, and replacement parts to Vorthan forces scattered across the city, but Nayoung reprogrammed them to deliver human-made explosives instead. The first time this happened, a Vorthan base received what they thought was a routine supply drop. When they opened the containers expecting to find energy cells and ration packs, they instead found bombs that destroyed half their compound. The aliens could no longer trust their own supply system. Sun Ho Choi was still coordinating resistance activities through gaming networks, but his role had expanded to include psychological warfare. He had hackers who could break into alien communication systems and broadcast disturbing messages to demoralize Vorthan troops. They showed footage of alien bodies being dragged through streets. They broadcast recordings of human children singing songs about killing invaders. They sent images of Vorthan soldiers begging for mercy before being executed. The message was clear: Earth belonged to humans, and the aliens were not welcome. By the end of the third week, something fundamental had changed. The Vorthans were no longer the hunters. They had become the hunted. Their soldiers were afraid to leave their bases. Their patrols moved in larger groups and stayed close to their vehicles. Their commanders were sending increasingly desperate requests for reinforcements, but reinforcements would take months to arrive across interstellar distances, and every day gave the humans more time to learn, adapt, and become deadlier. The civilians of Earth had transformed from helpless victims into the most dangerous enemy the Vorthan Empire had ever faced. Commander Thexril realized that his forces were not just losing battles. They were losing the war against an enemy that refused to follow any rules he understood. 2 months after the invasion began, the Vorthan Empire was facing something that had never happened in their long history of conquest. Their elite military forces were being systematically destroyed by primitive civilians who should have surrendered weeks ago. Instead, these humans were getting stronger and more dangerous every day. Commander Thexril sat in his command ship reading reports that made no sense to him. His best soldiers were being killed by groups of humans who then vanished into the population like ghosts. Entire companies of Crimson Guard warriors were being wiped out in carefully planned ambushes that showed tactical knowledge his enemies should not possess. Yu had turned intelligence gathering into an art form that surpassed anything the Vorthans had seen before. His network of civilian spies was so comprehensive that the aliens could not move without being detected within Minutes, he used everyone from delivery drivers to cleaning ladies to track enemy movements. The system worked like this. A child walking to school would notice which buildings had alien guards. A shopkeeper would count how many vehicles passed his store. A nurse would report which aliens looked sick or injured. All of this information flowed back to Wanshik through a network of coded messages that the aliens could not intercept. His greatest success came when he learned that the Vorthons were planning a major offensive against the resistance strongholds in the subway tunnels. The aliens thought they could trap the humans underground and eliminate them all at once. But Wanshik had 3 days warning and used that time to prepare a surprise. When the Vorthon forces entered the subway system, they found themselves in a maze of tunnels that had been turned into the ultimate death trap. Every intersection had hidden explosives. Every corridor had sniper positions. Every maintenance room contained fighters ready to attack from behind. The aliens who entered the tunnels never came out. The Vorthons tried to counter this intelligence advantage by implementing brutal policies. They started executing 10 civilians for every dead alien soldier. They destroyed entire neighborhoods where resistance activities were suspected. They tortured prisoners to get information about resistance networks, but these harsh measures only made the situation worse for the invaders. Every execution created more enemies. Every destroyed building motivated more people to join the resistance. Every act of cruelty convinced more humans that the aliens had to be completely eliminated. Chai had been a nurse before the invasion, but the aliens had killed her husband and 2 children when they bombed the hospital where she worked now. She was something the Vorthons had never encountered before. She was a human who had lost everything and had nothing left to lose. She started leading what became known as suicide attacks, but they were much more sophisticated than simple bomb explosions. Her teams would study alien positions for weeks, learning guard rotations, supply schedules, and communication patterns. Then they would strike in ways that caused maximum damage with minimum risk to nearby civilians. Her most famous operation involved infiltrating a Vorthon command center by disguising herself as a refugee seeking medical help. Once inside, she activated a device that Hyunwoo Kang had created using alien technology. The device released a cloud of engineered bacteria that killed every alien in the building within hours. The psychological impact of these attacks was devastating to Vorthon morale. The aliens realized that any human they encountered might be carrying weapons or biological agents. They could not trust anyone. They could not feel safe anywhere on Earth. Onbi recruited others who had lost families to the aliens. These people formed the core of what became known as the Ghost Brigade. They specialized in appearing wherever the aliens felt most secure and reminding them that nowhere on Earth was safe for invaders. The Ghost Brigade developed tactics that terrified even experienced Vorthon soldiers. They would infiltrate alien bases by hiding in supply shipments. They would replace alien food with poisoned versions. They would sabotage life support systems in alien shelters. They fought a war where the enemy never knew when or where death would come. Meanwhile, Jaewon Park had expanded his weapon-making operation to include dozens of convenience stores and small businesses across Seoul. Each location was producing improvised explosives, chemical weapons, and modified tools that could kill aliens. His network was supplying resistance fighters throughout the city. The beauty of his system was that it used completely ordinary materials that the aliens could not restrict without destroying human civilization. Cleaning supplies, cooking oil, fertilizer, paint thinner. All of these could be turned into weapons, but they were also necessary for normal life. His teams had also learned to use the aliens' own technology against them. They salvaged energy cells from damaged alien equipment and used them to power improvised weapons. They converted alien communication devices into remote detonators. They turned alien medical equipment into torture devices for captured soldiers. The final psychological blow came when human resistance fighters began broadcasting their own messages using captured Vorthon communication equipment. They showed footage of alien soldiers being hunted through the streets. They broadcast the sounds of Vorthon warriors begging for mercy before being killed. Messages were sent directly to Vorthan command ships in orbit so that alien leaders could see exactly what was happening to their forces on the ground. The humans wanted every alien in the galaxy to know that Earth was not a place where invaders could expect to survive. Kyungmin Jang had trained thousands of civilians in urban combat tactics, but his most important lesson was about mindset. He taught them that the aliens were not invincible. Despite their advanced technology and superior numbers, they were still just living creatures who could be killed. His training camps had produced fighters who could move through the city like shadow strike without warning and disappear before the aliens could respond. They knew every hiding place, every escape route, every vulnerable point in alien defensive positions. The cumulative effect of all these resistance activities was that the Vorthan forces were slowly being destroyed. They lost soldiers every day, but could not replace them. They lost equipment that could not be repaired. They lost morale that could not be restored. By the end of the second month, Commander Thexril realized that his invasion force was not just failing, it was being systematically exterminated. The humans had turned warfare into something he did not recognize. They fought without honor, without rules, and without mercy. The reports from other Vorthan commanders across Earth were all the same. Human civilians were killing professional soldiers using improvised weapons and basic tactics. The humans were winning through sheer determination and a complete refusal to accept defeat. Commander Thexril began to understand that the Vorthan Empire had made a terrible mistake. They had assumed that conquering Earth would be easy because humans appeared primitive and weak. Instead, they had awakened something that might destroy them all. 3 months after the Vorthan Empire invaded Earth, the impossible had happened. The most feared military force in the galaxy was not just defeated, it was completely destroyed. The humans had accomplished what 17 other civilizations had failed to do. They had eliminated an entire alien invasion force using nothing but determination and improvised weapons. CNO had been a construction manager before the invasion, but now he was commanding the final assault on the main Vorthan base in Seoul. His army consisted of teachers, shopkeepers, students, and grandparents, all united by a single purpose: making the aliens pay for underestimating humanity. Vorthan Command Center was a massive fortified complex that had been built on top of the ruins of Seoul City Hall. It was protected by energy shields, automated weapon systems, and the last 200 elite Crimson Guard soldiers on Earth. These were the aliens' best warriors, and they were preparing for their final battle. But Sahan and his fighters had advantages that no traditional army could match. They knew every building, every tunnel, and every hiding place in the city. They had weapons that the aliens could not defend against. They had intelligence networks that told them exactly where every enemy soldier was positioned. Final assault began at dawn with a coordinated attack from 12 different directions. Resistance fighters emerged from subway tunnels, rooftops, and abandoned buildings. They used captured alien weapons, homemade explosives, and biological agents that Hyunwoo Kang had perfected over months of experimentation. The aliens fought back with everything they had, but they were outnumbered and outmaneuvered by humans who knew the terrain perfectly. For every resistance fighter who fell, 2 more appeared to take their place. The humans had learned that the only way to defeat the aliens was to never stop. King Min Ji-hong had been an airline pilot before the invasion, but she had spent the last month learning to fly captured Vorthan aircraft. The alien ships were not difficult to operate once you understood the basic controls. The hard part was staying alive long enough to master them. She had crashed 4 different alien fighters while learning to fly them, but each crash taught her something new about how the ships worked. Now she was leading a squadron of 12 human pilots in an attack on the Vorthan fleet still orbiting Earth. Her pilots included a bus driver who had learned to fly by trial and error, a teenage video game player who treated the alien ships like flight simulators, and a retired Air Force mechanic who understood how to modify the ships for better performance. None of them had formal training in alien technology, but all of them were willing to die to protect their planet. The battle in space was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Human pilots who had been flying alien ships for only weeks were outfighting Vorthan crews who had trained. For decades, the humans succeeded because they were willing to take risks that no professional pilot would consider mangy. Led the final attack on Commander Thek's Rail flagship by ramming her fighter directly into the ship bridge. Her sacrifice created an opening that allowed the other human pilots to destroy the command ship and eliminate the alien. Leadership: the Vorthan fleet scattered in panic with no one left to give orders back. On the surface, the battle for the command center was reaching its climax. Sihun-Oh and his fighters had broken through the outer defenses and were fighting room by room through the alien stronghold. The remaining Vorthan soldiers were trapped with no way to escape. Commander Thexrel had barricaded himself in the central command room with his last dozen guards. He tried to contact other Vorthan forces across the galaxy to request evacuation, but the humans had captured all of his communication equipment. He was completely cut off from any help. When Sahun and his fighters finally broke into the command room, they found the alien commander sitting at his desk, staring at displays showing the complete destruction of his invasion force. Every Vorthan base on Earth had been overrun. Every alien ship had been destroyed. Every member of his army was dead. The commander looked up at the humans surrounding him and tried to negotiate. He offered to withdraw from Earth in exchange for safe passage for himself and his remaining soldiers. He promised that the Vorthan Empire would never bother humanity again if they would just let him leave. But the humans had learned not to trust alien promises. They had seen what happened when the Vorthans were shown mercy. They remembered the executions of surrendering soldiers, the bombing of hospitals, and the murder of children. The answer was simple, and Final Jowan Park was the one who pulled the trigger. He used a captured Vorthan energy rifle to kill Commander Thexrail and his remaining guards. The convenience store owner who had started the resistance by throwing homemade bombs was now ending it by eliminating the last alien leader. The death of Commander Thexrail marked the end of the Vorthan presence on Earth. But the humans were not finished. They had captured dozens of alien ships, hundreds of energy weapons, and vast amounts of advanced technology. They began reverse engineering everything they could find. Within weeks, human scientists and engineers were producing their own versions of alien energy weapons, propulsion systems, and communication devices. The technology that the Vorthans had used to conquer other worlds was now being used by the humans to prepare for their own expansion into space. The few Vorthan survivors who had managed to escape Earth carried terrifying stories back to their home worlds. They spoke of a species that fought without honor, that turned every civilian into a soldier, and that showed no mercy to invaders. These stories spread throughout the galaxy and created a new reputation for humanity. Other alien civilizations began to hear about the planet where an entire Vorthan invasion force had been destroyed by primitive civilians. The stories grew with each telling until humans were described as the most dangerous species in known space, a species that could turn household items into weapons and refuse to surrender even when facing impossible odds. Final image that summarized humanity's victory was simple. Jawan Park stood in the ruins of Seoul holding a captured alien energy rifle while watching human engineers work on reverse engineering a damaged Vorthan spacecraft. The convenience store owner had become a symbol of what ordinary humans could accomplish when they refused to give up. The galaxy had learned a lesson that would never be forgotten. Never underestimate a species that treats every home as a fortress, every civilian as a soldier, and every defeat as motivation to fight harder. The humans had not just survived their first contact with galactic civilization, they had announced their arrival in the most dramatic way possible. Earth children had shown the galaxy that humanity was not a species to be conquered. They were a species that would conquer others, and every alien civilization now knew that the small blue planet in an unremarkable star system was home to the most dangerous warriors in the universe.